Hey, it's Bible Forum time, Sunday night, first Sunday in February. I'm Warren Sprouse. I'm here for you. How old are Homo sapiens? You and me, as a species, how old are we? The evolutionist openly declares his theories of origins to be the only scientific theory. Everything else is religion, and therefore considered superstitious or folklore. These so-called superstitions and folklore theories maintain that God created human beings about 7 to 10,000 years ago, give or take, and placed them in a perfect environment, one suitable to their need and to their comfort. That early mankind lived longer and were far more intelligent and adept at every discipline of life than we are today. The only existing record shows lives lived for 500 to 900 years and longer. Men who were apparently smarter and more constructive than we are today. Can you say pyramids? Can you look at the precision, the orientations of these objects, and the age at which they were done with what we consider to be the tools of the day? The pyramids of Egypt, I'm told, could not have been constructed without a knowledge of some of the most significant, sophisticated mathematical equations. Just this week, scientists discovered a lost city in South America, a lost city of the Mayans. It was uncovered by satellite technology. The city is largely hidden from view by the jungle, but the satellite technology could see through the jungle. Ancient societies that were highly developed, some say more developed than we are today. And then there's the global catastrophe, which literally exploded the planet, spewing rock and water up into the air, an event which tore the vapor barrier, protecting the earth so that water began to rain down while the water from the deep was coming up and covering the entire world. A world without mountains. A world without disease, dangerous animals, extreme weather, and catastrophic events. The mantle of the earth was broken and moved apart. And as it moved, and it moved east and west, according to what we can see of it, it pushed up great mountain ranges, the major of which are all running north and south. As the water rose, the animals and the people drowned. Those who sought protection from whatever heights were available were ultimately overcome by the rising water and then caught up on the massive drainage as water suddenly sought its own levels. And we find La Brea tar pits and other places where all these animals are all torn up in there. I mean, the evidence is there for this sort of thing. Caves up in the mountain with bones of animals that don't climb mountains. But there are those who reject the Bible's message, and they have opted for an alternate theory that all we see evolved from nothing, a scientific and logical impossibility. And for them, nothing produced something. It's called a Big Bang. Now, to date, no explosions have ever produced anything physically better than what was already there, let alone bring something into existence where nothing was before. Science. For the evolutionists, single-celled life forms evolved into complex life forms, eventually resulting in what we know today as human beings. And all this makes man the descendants and beneficiaries of every lesser life form on the planet. We're not allowed to kill any endangered species. If many people had their way, we'd never kill any animals, period. They're just on a different level. They're coming up through the chain. Leave them alone. Over many millions of years, life forms evolved into ever complex and more creative animals, eventually becoming Homo sapien. Homo, man, sapien, having the sense of. All of this should be evident in the fossil record of this planet. Over the years, scientists have paraded out all sorts of skeletons to prove their theory. The theory that human beings sprang from more inferior life forms, evolving both in physical form and in ability over millions, billions of years. Many of the skeletons they have found have been either certified as fakes or only vaguely resemble human beings, often more ape-like than human. Much of the more famous of them are just one bone. The species, they say, is evolving. When it's evolving, this sort of thing is happening. They will evolve in terms of ability. They will also evolve in terms of how they look. They will evolve in terms of the tools that they're able to use. Obviously ranging from the crude to the complex in that same upward motion. And all of this is taking many thousands, even millions of years to accomplish. However, in the last 50 to 75 years, the theory has suffered some significant damage. Bones, tools, structures, and so forth have appeared in the fossil record completely out of order. Things have appeared at the same strata that were labeled thousands, if not tens of thousands of years apart. But here they are in the same strata. Well, recently there have been at least two interesting and I think important finds. A jawbone found in a cave in Israel's Mount Carmel region has reset the clock on human evolution. Their words, not mine. The fossil, the earliest known record of Homo sapiens outside of Africa, was discovered in 2002 during an excavation on prehistoric Mislia Cave. After 15 years of extensive research by an international team of multidisciplinary scientists, the unique remains of an adult upper jawbone, complete with several teeth, has been dated to 170,000 to 200,000 years ago. And that sounds like a long time ago, but for the evolutionists, it is way too early to be human. But way too young for the evolutionist. The research was published this past Thursday in the prestigious Science magazine. For the past 50 years, scientists have believed that modern humans appeared in Africa, the cradle of humanity, and that they did so roughly 160 to 200,000 years ago. And that's based on fossils found in Ethiopia. The earliest record of migration outside of Africa is dated to around 90 to 120,000 years. That's through the fossils that were discovered in Israel's caves, to names I can't pronounce, almost 90 years ago. But with this new jawbone, they say the history of human evolution is being rewritten. According to the head of the Dan David Center for Human Evolution and Biohistory Research at Tau's Steinhardt Museum of Natural History, quote, the entire narrative of the evolution of Homo sapien must be pushed back by at least 100 to 200,000 years. The dating of a modern human fossil to 200,000 years ago, quote, implies that the biological history of our species must be pushed back to 500,000 years. It implies that our species did not evolve in isolation. The species was involved with a very long interaction with other groups. Our species, they say, is a genetic mishmash of several homonyms. In addition, they found tools and furniture. The tools, some 60,000 flint tools, indicated a variety of diet, from chunky primitive hand axes to purposefully knapped, lightweight, technologically advanced projectiles and thin knives. There was an abundance of meat-bearing limb bones displaying filleting cut marks, and the acquisition of prime-aged prey, demonstrating that early middle Paleolithic people possessed and developed hunting capabilities. This modern large game hunting, carcass transport, and meat processing behaviors were already established in the Levant in the early Middle Paleolithic age, more than 200,000 years ago, according to the Journal of Human Evolution study generated from this dig. They had a delicatessen in the cave, we're told. They listed deer steaks, rabbits, ostrich eggs, and wild boars as among the foodstuffs found in the caves. They supped on ham and eggs, one woman joked. Likewise, Weinstein Evron, the team's leader, discovered the world's first signs of the use of organic padding for the settlers' seats next to the communal hearth. And seat cushions. The dating completed, they say we have proved that the specimen belongs to our species, Homo sapien. 170,000 years, too long ago. To that end, the bone was scanned for 3D analysis. Tel Aviv University's Dr. Rachel Serig participated in the analysis. She reported, quote, "In the Mislia specimen, we used the most advanced methods, micro-CT analysis, which actually allowed us to dig into the tooth, to virtually peel the layers of the bone and other teeth. We could look into the tooth in the dentin layer and analyze the shape of the dentin of the roots of the tooth and the enamel crown." She said the specimen displays modern characteristics. It has more modern features which are similar to modern populations than to other ancient populations such as Neanderthal. As to who these early modern humans were and what they were capable of, they say it's impossible to know based purely on this upper jawbone. But judging from the sophistication of their tools, which were formed using a very unique technique, their intellectual capabilities were formidable. Hershowitz says, "I personally believe they were as smart as we are today." But it's just a guess. The Bible? Psalm 139:14, "I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth right well." Along this same line, there is a mystery on display at the Mount Blanco Fossil Museum in Crosbyton, Texas, with what appears to be evidence of man-made artifacts that were embedded in sandstone, reported to be 300 million years old. The problem? The human beings capable of this are dated no more than 70,000 years ago. Can you say, oops? Curator Joe Taylor recently molded a series of depressions left by 4 strange objects that left behind impressions in hard Pennsylvanian sandstone, a layer of strata said to be 300 million years old. The appearance of the objects is similar to modern plumbing valves, complete with hex head nuts. The site of the discovery is within the tri-state area of Oklahoma, Kansas, and Missouri. Its precise location is secret, kept under wraps until a further investigation has concluded. No one knows when the actual objects themselves, which made the depressions, were removed. Chisel marks are discernible at the small ends of the impressions, likely from someone prying the objects loose. You can see shatter marks around them, Taylor said. That means something was in those depressions. The current whereabouts of the objects are also unknown. Todd Jurasik was alerted to the existence of the impressions by an elderly Native American World War II veteran. Jurasik in turn contacted Joe Taylor, known for his skill in creating successful molds in difficult locations and conditions. And he says, "I molded the depressions where the objects had been. Then I molded that mold and I cast it, which gives us the objects and their shape." Fossils of sea creatures are often found in Pennsylvanian sandstone, but what were man-made metal-type objects doing in ancient strata? Taylor said there's an obvious problem here. All the people who say this formation is 300 million years old would also say no man or mammals existed in that time period. So what's modern plumbing-like equipment doing there? Either the formation isn't that old, or the man was around before the dinosaurs. If that's the case, the evolution story we tell in schools can't possibly be true. People who believe the Bible over this kind of fairy tale telling have no problem with what's found in the various strata. If there's been a catastrophic flood that has moved everything around and covered stuff up, here's evidence of the confusion when you don't factor that in. Pennsylvania sandstone is very, very hard. He rules out any possibility that these impressions were made by modern-day equipment that just sank into the rock. You have foundations of buildings, they say, made of this sandstone because it won't sink. You got to chisel it to get anything in there. Both Pennsylvania sandstone and coal seams are allegedly to have yielded up metal artifacts in the past, but no one ever saved the coal. If they found a bowl or a bell in the coal, they never saved the coal itself, so you don't know if the object came from a gift shop. The Oklahoma impressions are a game changer, according to the scientific community. This is the matrix, they say. This is what the objects were in, and it can't be moved because it's at the bottom of a long creek. It's proof positive that the objects were there. How old are you? These artifacts were made by descendants of Adam within the last 6,000 years or so. The biblical timeline says Adam was created 6,000 years ago, and his descendant Tubal-Cain began working with metal, an artificer. At the time of Noah's flood, you had metal working for centuries. He opposes a gradualism view of geologic epochs. Taylor favors a catastrophe view in line with Genesis accounts, which maintains that the earth was shaped by sudden and violent events. The flood, Taylor said, caused the massive upheaval, the rushing of mud, the outflowing of water courses carried away buildings, artifacts, resulted in new layers and strata over short periods of time. And then as the waters abated, they carved out deep canyons all over the world. Where these objects were discovered, the abatement cut down through these newly laid sandstone layers and got down to the bottom of the layer, just like they would in a creek. In the following 4,500 years, rains came in, washed down, and finally exposed these things. The sandstone was still soft when these things were there, and it hardened. Plans are in place for Jurassic to return to the site with a metal detector. We don't know if there are more objects under these layers. 2 other impressions are located farther up the creek. All of this is very exciting. It may not be exciting to some in the scientific community, but if they're honest, they'll go where the science takes them. And the science is ripping them loose from their ancient theories. We'll see how that goes.